Napoleon Bonaparte started as a nobody. Well, almost. He was born on the island of Corsica, far from the center of French power. But in just a few years, this relatively unknown military officer would become the Emperor of France and conquer most of Europe. Then, he would lose it all, not once, but twice. This is the story of Napoleon, from nobody to emperor to nobody. When Napoleon was young, France was falling apart. The French Revolution had overthrown the monarchy, the country was at war with its neighbors, and Europe was in chaos. And chaos creates opportunities. Napoleon was a brilliant military commander. He moved quickly, he took risks, and, most importantly, he kept winning. Victory after victory made his name famous. Soon, Napoleon wasn't just a general, he was running France. And in 1804, he crowned himself emperor. Napoleon had gone from a relatively unknown officer to the most powerful man in France. But he wasn't satisfied with France. He wanted more, much more. Napoleon's armies swept across Europe, Austria, Prussia, Italy. Again and again, his enemies were defeated. At his peak, Napoleon controlled or dominated much of continental Europe. And this is where the story gets interesting, because Napoleon's greatest strength may have also been his greatest weakness. He kept winning, so he kept going. Eventually, he decided to invade Russia, and Napoleon arrived with one of the largest armies Europe had ever seen. It seemed unstoppable, but the Russians refused to give him the decisive battle he wanted. They retreated, they destroyed supplies, and they left Napoleon with a massive army, marching deeper and deeper into Russia. Then came the cold, the hunger, the disease, and the retreat. Napoleon had entered Russia with an enormous army. He left with a fraction of it. The man who had seemed unstoppable had finally been stopped. Napoleon's enemies saw their opportunity. Britain, Russia, Prussia, Austria. One by one, they joined forces against him. Napoleon was defeated. He was forced to give up his throne and was exiled to a tiny island. It looked like the end, but Napoleon wasn't finished. He escaped, returned to France, and somehow the emperor was back. For a brief moment, Napoleon had another chance. He raised an army. Europe panicked, and Napoleon marched into one final battle, Waterloo. He lost. This time, there would be no comeback. Napoleon was exiled again, this time to a remote island in the Atlantic. And there, the man who had once ruled an empire died in exile. Napoleon's empire was gone. His armies were gone. His throne was gone. But his legacy survived. He had reshaped Europe, changed the laws of France, and become one of the most famous figures in human history. Napoleon began as a nobody. He became an emperor. He conquered Europe. He lost everything. And then he came back, only to lose it all again. From nobody to emperor to nobody.